Welcome to My Body, My Bump, My Baby, where we help women be empowered, intentional mothers. This podcast is best enjoyed sipping tea or taking a stroll in nature. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be substituted for professional psychological or medical advice, diagnoses, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, midwife, or other qualified health provider with any questions about your personal situation, health, or medical condition. Welcome to the first episode of My Body, My Bump, My Baby. Here today we have your host, B, myself, and Hannah. Say hi, Hannah.
Hello.
We are so excited to be here. We're so excited about the launch of this podcast. We thought it would be a good place to start by telling you a little bit about why we decided to take the time to create this podcast for you. So, one of the things we noticed, my journey being a teacher and a studio owner for pregnant women, is that there's just not a lot of easy, accessible information about all of the options from preconception, pregnancy, birth, and even like first 2 years of motherhood. We have like a basic framework that the system, which is usually the medical system, kind of sticks you into. And if you don't peek your head up and look around, that's what you'll get. And that's okay for some people, but it's not okay for everybody. We're all unique and individual, and the one size fits all model just is not going to work for anyone. And so my intention is to help make some of this information a little bit more readily available. At a minimum, you might hear us talk about something on this podcast that you never heard of, and it starts to bring up questions for you, and you start a journey on gathering more information for yourself. But the idea is to start to highlight all the other options that are out there and that are available to you outside of the one-size-fits-all model.
And B has been in this world for how many years now, B?
So I've been a birth worker since 2012.
Mm-hmm. 10 years.
Is
a
it?
decade.
Oh, holy cow.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a lot of experience, like one-on-one experience with pregnancy, birth, and early postpartum, and so is my business in Colorado Springs, and we focus on pregnancy all the way through to like early toddlers, maybe like 2. And so between attending births and running the studio, I've got to see and experience quite a bit that I would love to share with everybody.
Mm-hmm. And so coming up, in subsequent episodes, we'll use B's knowledge in a lot of these things that we cover, but also we're digging into areas that are related to the health of the mother and the health of the child and the baby, all the way from starting before you even think about having a child up until young childhood or the small toddler. So we'll be talking about that. And myself, I've been in this world for about 3 years now, and it started when I was pregnant, to be honest. The health world I've been in for a little bit longer. But my business, I'm a holistic health coach in Colorado Springs, but I see clients throughout the entire world, actually. I'm able to. But I met B when I was doing prenatal yoga teacher training. And we hit it off, and it opened my eyes to a lot of the options that I had as a mother. And I was pregnant during the time that I was doing that training, and I think that it was probably one of the most empowering experiences because of the knowledge that I gained from it and gained from B. And then that kicked off my own journey of learning more and more about the pregnancy process, but also really the birth process, and then I integrated that into my practice. And so now I focus on working with women preconception to postpartum.
It's such a good marrying of two different skill sets because Hannah has so much education and experience in health and wellness, not only personal experience in her own journey, but also experience as a practitioner. And it's just amazing when you get to watch somebody actually walk through some interesting health things and be able to find healing through it. I think it just makes them a much better practitioner, which is what Hannah has done.
And that's what you do as a mother. Pregnancy is a catalyst for birthing not just the child, but you birth yourself.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of women find that little bit of transition or evolution in themselves as they go through pregnancy. But Hannah brings in a wealth of knowledge that I actually don't have. And so the two of us together, I think, will hopefully have you covered. I mean, we obviously don't know everything, but the idea is just to start shedding light on some of the things that are out there and get us thinking about, how we move through such an important time of our life. For many women, birthing a baby, creating a baby, being pregnant is going to be one of the biggest things they do in their entire life. It's not trivial. And for some women, they get one opportunity. Some women get a few more opportunities than that. But even so, even if you're a woman who has the opportunity to have 3 children or 4 children, when you think about that, it's still not a lot. It's very unique and special every single time. And so it just requires, in my opinion, that little extra level of forethought and attention. We're creating human life.
And the support. And that's one of the things that we've really dialed this podcast down into too. As women, we should all support each other, and you shouldn't have to dig and sift through information to get the answers that you want or lead you on the path to discover the answers that you desire and that are out there. An answer for you is not going to be an answer for someone else. It might not be the answer for your mother or your sister, but that's where we're all unique, and we just want to make sure that we're presenting options. And as B said, we do not know everything at all. And if we don't know something, we are the first to say, I don't know.
Yes.
And we will research to the extent that is possible on our end. But we also ask that as a mother and as someone that may be wanting to become a mother in the future, it's up to you, too, to do the research and to be intentional with the work that you do. To make those choices.
Yes, absolutely. So we're seed sowers. Hannah and I are both avid gardeners. And so we will sow seeds, and it's up to you to water them and tend to them and help them to grow into what you need those to be for you and your family. Today we want to talk about, since we're stating our intention for this podcast, our theme for today is intention or being intentional. And so today we want to talk about what it means to be an intentional mother. And you may not have heard this before. We came up with a definition that we think is fair. Our definition is an intentional mother is a mother who knows what she wants for herself and her family. She knows why she wants it, and she puts forth effort to ensure that she gets those things for herself and her family. And today we're just going to kind of dive into that concept a little bit. What does that look like? What does it mean?
And the definition is here for you to come back to and know that it's very rare that you find an intentional mother that has it all together. And so this is just one of the things that we just want to bring to light, that you have the ability, in the definition it says she knows why she wants it and puts forth effort to ensure that she gets those things for herself and her family. Your why is one of the most important things that you can dig or to create in your desire to raise a family. And it's one of the things that I always work on with clients, because if you don't have a why, you don't know literally why you're doing something. And there's nothing to come back to from a goal perspective every single time.
The why is your fuel.
Yeah.
Right? If you're trying to build a fire and you don't have fuel, it's going to fizzle out, right? Your motivation is going to fizzle out, and your ability to like stand firm in your decision when you're discussing it with other people will also fizzle out if you don't have a why. The why is like the most important thing.
And sometimes you have to make tough decisions as a mother, and if you have that why, you have the ability to intentionally follow through with those decisions that you're making, or those choices that you're making for yourself and your family.
And stand in strength as a mother.
Yeah, you're empowered.
Empowered
is what it is. Yeah.
Yes. That's going to be like our favorite word on this podcast for
empowered.
everybody to know. That's like one of our big goals, is to help women feel empowered through motherhood and pregnancy. So, you know, as Hannah and I were talking about intentional motherhood and what that might look like, we started to think about, you know, other places in our lives that are kind of a big deal, where we make big decisions. And we did a little bit of research into, you know, how much effort and time and focus and research goes into these. You know, Hannah, another one comes to my mind that we didn't do research on, but I'm really curious about: weddings.
Oh gosh,
So,
don't even want to talk about that.
Right?
Yeah.
But right away, what came to my mind when we were talking about this was a car. A car purchase is, you know, it's a big deal. It's a lot of money. And we did a little bit of research, and we found that on average, a consumer will visit 5 different dealerships before buying a car. Now, let's pause there for a second.
How many doctors do you visit, or midwives do you talk to?
How many OBs or midwives did you interview before you landed with yours?
Mine?
Well, like anybody, just out to the listeners. You know, this is a thing to think about, right? Preconception or once you're pregnant, I think a lot of people just either go to, maybe my friend recommended it, my mom recommended it, or this is the person that I've gone to for well woman exams, so I might as well just stay with them. But never really thought about it for a second and said, hey, you know, I'm literally hiring this person to walk hand in hand with me on this journey of becoming a mother and having a child, which is a very big deal. And you kind of want to make sure that that person and you are in alignment. Otherwise, you know, you can find yourself in these situations where you're feeling like you have to battle your provider, which is no good. You should never have to feel like you're fighting, not fighting literally, but, you know, having to like strongly advocate your side of what you want to your provider. And a lot of times that just means that maybe it's time to start interviewing.
Find another provider.
Other providers, yes.
Yeah, I see this all the time in all the mama groups I'm in. Someone says something like, my provider told me this or that, and usually the comment is, find a new provider.
Yes.
My OB told me this. And
yes.
Find a new provider is what all the comments say.
Now, I know that's scary because I think for a lot of women, you know, you have your person, that detail is, you know, carved in stone. And so the idea of going and finding a different provider could feel like you're kind of swinging out in the wind a little bit. What I would say is, you know, if you did not look at it this way before and we're kind of piquing your interest and you're like, hey, you know, I have noticed some things that are not fitting really well with my provider, and I never actually considered changing it up. Here's something to make you feel safe. This is like the anchor point. You do not have to change your provider in order to interview other providers.
You don't even have to tell them.
You don't have to tell them. So you're anchored in. You're still safe. You got your person. You can interview others, and when you find that other person, then you can transfer care. And this is not just for the OB or the midwife, but this is also for peds, the pediatrician.
Oh, yeah.
Super important relationship that you need to have with that person. And that one is going to actually last a lot longer than your OB's relationship. And so you really want to make sure it's a good fit. So
we'll talk about different providers in an episode in the future as well.
Yeah.
Different options to choose and questions to ask. So B talked about, like, on average, the consumer is visiting 5 dealerships before buying. But they typically take about 6 months to make a decision, too. So they're doing research those 6 months, figuring out, mulling over what it is that they want. And I love this 6-month analogy because so many people decide they want to have a baby and they're going to have a baby tomorrow. They're going to get pregnant tomorrow. And when you look at, it's actually very hard to find any information or data on how long a woman researches pregnancy ahead of time. But in my experience with my clients that I typically see I want to get pregnant next week when I ovulate. Or
oh, gosh.
I want to get pregnant soon, or I want to get pregnant fast if it's in the preconception period. And
so from a health coach perspective, for a woman who is in this phase where she just decided, like I'm ready to have this baby, and we're trying now.
Yeah, and that's absolutely an age thing too. I mean, you hit an age oftentimes, and you're like, oh,
got to do this.
Got to do it.
So from a health coach perspective, would you be able to give any advice on, so we see that people for a vehicle would be doing research for a vehicle 6 months prior to actually walking into a dealership. For a woman who's wanting to get pregnant, are there things, or is there an amount of time that she should be focusing on her body and her health preconception in order to ensure a really good pregnancy for her baby?
Yeah, absolutely. There is a time limit, and there's the time limit from science of the minimum time limit, and then there's the optimal time frame.
Oh.
So the minimal time frame that you want to so there's a rhyme and a reason behind this. So our follicles that we have that create, or the eggs that we have in our ovaries, they are created up to 1 year in advance.
Oh.
But a follicle actively develops into the egg over a course of 90 to 120 days. So that's about 3 to 4 cycles that your body goes through, or about 4 months time frame, looking at it that way. And sperm takes about 75 days to mature.
Oh my gosh, you just brought up a whole nother concept in my mind that just kind of like, poosh, I haven't even considered the health of the sperm.
Yeah, so we can talk about that in another episode too.
So both partners should be
focusing
preparing
on
their body.
Yeah, and 75 days is different than 90 to 120 days. But if you can both give yourself a minimum of 3 to 4 months, you're gonna have the ability to optimize your health to the extent that you more than most people.
I mean, let's think about this for a second, what we're really talking about, because I think sometimes it can get a little bit lost. But so at Enso, we have an ultrasound studio, and there's a lot of people who come in early in pregnancy, and they're really worried about the health of their baby. Could you imagine what it would be if you were very intentional about planning this pregnancy, and you guys took that 4 months, like both people took the 4 months to prepare their body by nourishing and exercising and keeping stress levels down and all of those good things to ensure that when sperm and egg come together, they're both like super, super healthy. I wonder, like, if we had that intention in the beginning, would that alleviate some of those worries? I mean,
I personally think so.
For me, it would.
Yes, for me it does.
And maybe that's just, I don't know if that's arrogance or ego, but in my mind, I would think, hey, I know I did everything I could to make sure that these little cells were at their peak and optimal that they could be for conception. And so maybe there would be a little bit more trust from me as a new mother, like, it should be okay.
Yeah, it provides more empowerment and more trust, confidence in the pregnancy.
The entire pregnancy, because if you're thinking, like, from the very beginning, I know I did everything I could to make sure that this little one's healthy. That's huge. I love that.
Yeah. So that again, everything happens in trimesters. In this phase of a woman's life, you have your pre-trimester, your first trimester, second trimester, third trimester, fourth trimester, which is postpartum.
I love that.
And it's just funny how the world works with that number, too.
I've actually never heard of pre-trimester.
I haven't either. I just made that up.
I love it.
I just thought about it.
We are going to coin it and use it for now on. I mean, that's perfect.
Yeah, it is. It's really interesting to think about just how it's a pattern.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
Nature has created these
if you pay attention
things.
And notice.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yes.
But optimally, if you can give yourself that 6 months, 6 to 12 months prior, 12 is harder. 12 is like a challenging number, but 6 months prior, like what you would do when you're researching a car buy, you have the ability to really dictate a lot of things about your health, your partner's health, and your unborn or your even like preconceived baby's health.
Yeah, right. The health of your pregnancy.
Yeah, which is an amazing thing. You can focus on the right foods to eat, the right nutrients to give your body. You can get a baseline blood draw if that's something that speaks to you.
So quick question for you regarding that, what did you call?
Pre-trimester.
Pre-trimester. Would it be the same for a first-time mom versus a second or third-time mom?
Well, if you want to talk about child spacing here, is that where you're kind of going with it, or what?
Well,
what do
just
you mean?
Is the amount of time the same as far as like?
Oh yeah.
If you're a first-time
Yes.
mom or you're a third-time mom, could like if we have a listener, you know, two different moms here,
Yes.
is it still like let's at least
Same.
give 3 to 6 months?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Not really a change there. And oftentimes, if you know you're going to have multiple children already, or you would like to have multiple children, you have your first one, great. Like, you know, enjoy and like focus on your baby for well, you're always going to focus on your baby and your child, to be honest. But you can start from birth. You can start rebuilding your body and rebuilding your supply, knowing you're going to have another child, and rebuilding your nutrients and ensuring that your body is going to be ready when your cycle comes back and it starts getting into a flow. You can do that like 2 years in advance, 3 years in advance. That's where I am in my life everything that I do for my health is to hopefully support an optimal pregnancy in the future again.
I love that. I love that.
That's my why.
Right.
Otherwise, I have to find another why.
Well, and you know, here we come back to that. Know your why. I think it's easy to get through things that we're working on if it's a short timeline. But when we're talking 1 year or 2 years, man, you really better know that why, because it would be very easy to slip up or just kind of fall into old habits that are probably not the healthiest, you know.
Yeah. It's even easier to, in the terms of goal setting and SMART goals, having that 1 to 2 year thing can be great. But if your why was, I want to be healthy for my children, that's not specific enough. So I want to be healthy for my next pregnancy, which I want to create or which I want to have happen hopefully within the next 3 years.
Smaller milestones.
Yep. And then even from there, smaller goals. But that can be, it's way more achievable when we make goals that way.
So another big purchase that we thought of was like buying a home. How much time do we spend on average researching or preparing to buy a home? Let's see. We found an article from First Team that we will link in the resources. U.S. home buyers view on average 19 homes. So if we're thinking like viewing a home could be either similar to interviewing a practitioner or actually going and looking at facilities. Mm-hmm. Did you interview your facility? No, but did you like look around and see like, let me look at this facility. Let me look at that facility. Let me look at this facility. Which one feels safe and comfortable to me? Like, what a concept. I love that idea. Instead of like, oh, well, you know, my provider is in this place, and so I have to be there, and I really don't like it.
Yep.
And it also said that on average they spend about 124 hours to find their next home. And for this one, I feel like that has more to do with, if I was to make a comparison to pregnancy or birth, I would say that has more to do with maybe the research you do for pregnancy and childbirth. So maybe your childbirth ed. How many hours did you spend learning about pregnancy? How many hours did you spend learning about childbirth? How many hours did you spend practicing and preparing for labor? And that could even include other things beyond labor, like planning for breastfeeding or newborn care. So 124 hours, that's quite a bit. But if you think about it, you have...
How long is your class? Isn't it like
It's 12 and a half total.
But then you have newborn.
But I have 4 supplemental classes in addition.
And then we're going to add in nourishing.
Which would be another 10 to 12. So about 24 hours total. So 24 hours... It's still not a lot. We still do, there's so much you can really get involved in. But I do like the idea of, you got 9 to 10 months of
you got
pregnancy.
A lot of time. Space it out even.
Yeah.
Maybe save it for second trimester.
Yeah, learn a little here, learn a little there. You don't have to get overwhelmed by it, and you can have fun with it. But it is nice to know what you're walking into. Could you just imagine? Like, let's go back to the purchasing a car analogy. This actually did happen to me. So, I had an Audi. I really liked this Audi. One day I was driving home, and there's this hill that you have to go up. And halfway up the hill, my transmission just went thunk.
This is a new Audi?
It was old. It was an old Audi. And I was stuck, and I had no car. And so I was just in a pinch, and I was in a place where I'm like, okay, great. I need to, this weekend go and buy a car. No research, no anything. I just there was this big lot of cars, and I went to this big lot of cars, and I walked in there, and I'm like, I want to spend about this much. But
show me my options.
Yes, exactly.
You can't even go say, I want to spend this much. Okay, well, you can't have a C-section. You can't do that.
Right? But I was basically being guided by the salesperson, the dealership, and they're just going to be like, well, this. And I was kind of in a place where I didn't have a whole ton of information, and I didn't really know. I just knew I needed a car. What if if we're attacking pregnancy and birth that way? I mean, how bad is that? You're like, okay, I'm pregnant, and then you go into the OB, and you're like, I know nothing about anything. Please tell me all the stuff. And the OB is going to be like, okay, you need to do this, and you don't question it, and you don't ask any oh, are there any options? Is this it? No, you're just like, okay, yes, whatever you say, because I don't know anything about this, and I just all the way until the baby's born, and then maybe you come out and you're like, dang, man, this car I bought sucks. Totally doesn't fit me. I don't know what I was thinking. It's 2-wheel drive. I live in a place that snows. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. How did I get here? Mm-hmm. And the same can happen with birth, right? You come out, you're bringing your baby home, and you're just like, what the hell just happened to me?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's definitely interesting to compare these, and then bringing up the wedding. Oh, man. That's probably...
People spend a year...
Or more.
Preparing for a wedding.
And the amount of money that you spend on that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Versus, I don't want to take a birth prep class. Maybe.
Which is, let's bring that into perspective. I don't want to spend, here in Colorado Springs, the birth prep classes really are not that expensive. We're talking something along the lines of $200 to $350 for, a 5 to 8 week course. How much did you spend on your dress? How much did you spend on catering? How much did you spend on photography or a venue? And if you think about that, I know that a wedding seems like a very important thing at the moment, but when you become pregnant, you realize a wedding's pretty small potatoes compared to creating a human life.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
And I will take that one step further. and eventually we'll talk deeper about this, but this is a very big hot button item for me, is if you can afford this, choose what makes sense for you in your pregnancy. Don't let your health insurance dictate it. I can't because my insurance won't let me. Really? Let's go back to that wedding analogy. Did you spend $10,000, $8,000, $25,000? I can guarantee that it's going to be a lot less than that even if you veer off away from your insurance just to do something that feels more appropriate for you and your family.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's where making intentional choices and really sitting down and looking at it from that perspective too of, okay, this is my health. This is my child's health. This is my husband's sanity or my partner's sanity.
And let's talk about child health. When you say that, it's my child's health. We know now, based on research, that what happens in pregnancy and birth sets the child up for the rest of their life for their health. Mm-hmm. There are genetics that they inherit. But beyond genetics, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that happens in utero and at birth that literally will set their health up for the rest of their life. And if you look at it that way, does it make sense to allow insurance to dictate how that unfolds?
You could also spend a little bit of money in the short run to save money in the long run in that sense too. Things like medical conditions that come up for your children, just like basic things of ear infections and strep throat and eczema, like that's not normal. Intentionally, we can very intentionally support our health preconception, during pregnancy, and then our child's health in the first few years. Yeah, immediately in the first few years of their life, to nix that and literally say, that's not normal. It's common, but it's not normal.
Right. And of course, we're talking to the person who has the funds to make choices, but potentially will not make choices in their favor because they have insurance to do it instead.
And you don't even need the funds to be intentional, though.
So let's get into that. So if you don't have the funds and you are like 100% dependent on the insurance, if you're going to be intentional, what might you do to ensure that your medical insurance is going to give you the options that you might need?
So if you're being intentional about planning your pregnancy or planning when you want to have children, you can make choices pre-pregnancy to choose the insurance policies that are going to give you the right options or the options that you want. And that's empowering yourself with the knowledge of what those options are and what it is that the insurance is going to give you.
So you kind of have to be a little bit ahead of the game. I think you kind of have to, one, know you're going to be trying for pregnancy, and two, maybe even have thought of where do I want to birth? What do I want it to look like? So that way, when you're selecting your insurance policy preconception, you are looking for a policy that will hopefully cover the facility that you want to birth at. Or maybe you want to do some alternative modalities such as chiropractic. Well, you might want to ensure that you select a policy where chiropractic is covered. So then now that's an option for you.
Yeah, a scenario that comes to mind that's in my world a lot is TRICARE, like Prime versus Select. One is you're seen on base most of the time, and your providers are assigned to you, and you have to get a referral out. The other one, which has I think it's like $125, like, what is it? Not a copay, but whatever you pay. Deductible, yeah. Thanks for the word. Every year, and you can go and choose. Select as you can choose your own providers, and so the thing is that you have to change that during open enrollment. So if you have an idea that, something is coming up and changing in your health and you want to be able to have those options, you can make that choice during open enrollment.
Right.
So you're not stuck.
Pregnancy, becoming pregnant, is not a qualifying event.
But birthing your baby is. So once you have your child,
you can change it.
Change it.
But it's a little late by then for your...
Yeah. You can often get referrals out, and a lot of other doctors can do that too in different policies. They can refer out. But you're going to really have to empower yourself with knowledge and have confidence to ask and give them a why and find someone that's going to refer you out.
And that's just a lot of stress and extra hurdles. Like if you were intentional and you had a plan, and this is where, 6 months to a year in advance would come into play, because you would have the opportunity to okay, when is open enrollment for insurance, and where do I want to be, and have some time to think about those things, and maybe even investigate your various policy options.
So this is intense intentionality. But it's your body, it's your bump, and it's your baby. Right. So if you can make these decisions for yourself and you have the opportunity.
It could be for some women, and we see this all the time at Enso. It's the difference between having the birth experience that you want and having the birth experience that somebody else is providing for you. So I see it all the time. I see women who may come in and they want to birth at our local freestanding birth center, and they are unfortunately being forced into a hospital facility instead because their insurance is not covered or accepted by the birth center, and so that's dictating where they're having their baby and who is providing their care.
And planning ahead also gives you the opportunity to save up, if that is on in the cards for you, to be able to save for the experience that you want. Home birth is sometimes covered by insurance, depending on the practitioner and the insurance policy, but a lot of women that I know have chosen home birth, and they've very intentionally saved their money and to pay for it out of pocket, and it's an investment for them that they see.
It is an investment. And talking about investments, if we're going to save, we're going to be intentional, and we're going to save in preparation for this pregnancy and this birth, imagine what else you can add to it. So, in the future, we have an episode about what is a doula. You may choose to save up enough money to ensure that you have a doula present. You may choose to save up enough money so that you can have some beautiful prenatal photography done, or some beautiful newborn photography done.
To take the classes.
To
have a health coach.
Yes, have a health coach, help you guys get prepared. If you have children, maybe you have a sibling doula available. So it's basically like a nanny, but they're on call and they'll come at 2 a.m. in the middle of the week. So many things become options for you if you have a plan, or if you've kind of saved up and prepared in that way. I love that.
And then, do you? Birth, where you can also be intentional with planning your birth. We talked a little bit about that, of planning for, so we've talked about the different options for your birth and the places and locations. And
one of the things that we haven't talked about is pre-registration. So we kind of talked about childbirth classes and birth plans. But what about pre-registration? I think this is something that most people they're not even aware.
So what we're talking about with this is when you check into a hospital setting and you're in labor, you have a lot of paperwork to do. You
in labor.
Hopefully don't. Hopefully it's a partner or someone else doing it. But you're sitting there having a surge or contraction, and then sign right here, ma'am. Sign right here, ma'am. Okay.
So you have no time to actually read and understand what you're signing. You have no idea what the heck you just put your name on.
What you're consenting to for yourself and your child.
Yes. This is a big deal. So, you actually, if you want to be intentional, you can get ahead of that. Some places, in Colorado Springs, we have an independent birth center, and they will actually give you a lot of this paperwork ahead of time to allow you to read it.
36 weeks with it. Yeah.
All of it?
All of it, yeah.
It's really great because, you get to read through their policies and the procedures, like what if this happens, if that happens, what are we going to do? But also, for each state, there's going to be state mandated protocols that the provider has to offer you. In hospital setting, typically they just say, now we're going to do this. And
they don't present it as an option,
Nope.
But it is an option.
It is an option. It's more presented like a statement. And then if you didn't know it was an option, you would just be like, oh, okay. But it turns out the statement is an option, and you do have the opportunity to say no. If you know to say no, you could say no, and they'll be like, oh, okay, we'll just sign this form. But you have to know what those are. You need to know the risks and the benefits of them. Why would you be saying no? Why would you be saying yes? Why are they even freaking doing them? Like, that's a big question.
And that
why
way
are they
you know
doing
the
this?
why. Again, it's not your why, but it's the why, which
why.
oftentimes helps you connect pieces to things.
Right. And so part of that stuff would be all of your immediate newborn care. So, you're going to go to the hospital, you're going to have this baby, and straight away they're going to start doing things to your baby. And the question is, do you agree with those things? Do you want those things to occur for your baby, or do you not? And if you don't know, how can you make a choice?
Mm-hmm. And so the pre-registration ahead of time, you can make those choices. Same with creating a birth plan ahead of time. We'll go into an episode on creating a birth plan too. But by pre-registering ahead of time, you know what all these choices are. You've signed whether you consent or whether you say, I do not consent to this, and you've signed those forms, and they have that on file then, so that way you can know that post-birth you have made those choices already.
And we're kind of just, right now, we're just kind of talking like very vaguely. But let me give you an example, because I want this to hit home. I want the listeners to really understand what we're talking about here. Here is a prime example. It's something that is going to happen in the hospital. It's very basic. And on the surface, it seems like, okay, no big deal, if you know nothing about it. The washing your baby.
Oh, washing baby. Okay.
So if your baby is born, within not too many hours, really, honestly, if they have the opportunity, within 3 to 4 hours, they will bathe your baby. Now, on the surface, you're like, what's the big deal, B? It's just the bath. Well, guess what? It's a massively big deal. Now, we won't get into all depth of details on that. That's a future episode when we go into microbiome. But
we're calling it It's Just a Bath.
It's just a bath. I love it. Microbiome, it's just a bath.
Oh, gosh.
Well, it turns out that when a baby is born vaginally, mom is seeding that baby with all of her vaginal juices that contains all of the bacteria, flora to start the baby's microbiome. That microbiome ends up creating the baby's immune system. Okay, we take a bath. Guess what we did? We just washed all of that off.
All the vernix that's on there. You just washed all the good stuff.
And in the hospital setting. That's not necessarily the kind of bacteria. So you cleaned off all the good stuff that mom's trying to provide for the baby so that the baby can live in her environment. And we're going to put on there all of the yucky hospital gook, right? So again, simple little thing. I just want to give your baby a bath. Turns out to actually have really big consequences. And it's important for us to know those in advance so that we can make those choices for our family.
Yeah, absolutely. My baby didn't have a bath for, I think, 4 weeks. You washed, sponge them off if needed. Right.
Get the crusties off.
Yeah, you wipe their booties when they go, Okay, so these are all areas where intention is of utmost importance in motherhood.
Intention shines light on you don't know what you don't know, which is huge.
Yeah, and so empower yourself with knowledge.
Right.
To be that intentional mother. And it doesn't mean you have to know your answer yet, but you have to have a path to get there, and being intentional with it and knowing your why behind wanting to know those answers is important.
And don't get yourself into a place of stress and overwhelm. This is another part of being intentional. Give yourself time and space to pick up little nuggets as you go. You don't have to get into a college course about having a baby.
No. Because what the decisions you're making now in pregnancy or even preconception, pregnancy, they go into your postpartum, or they go into the postpartum. They go into your relationship with your child and how you're raising your child, taking it full circle with your family. The decisions you're making on the foods that you're feeding your child, the healthcare decisions that you make for them. Where you want to live, or how you want them to school and learn.
Yes.
I don't want to call it school, how you want them to learn.
Yeah.
Who you want to have in your tribe and your community, and who you want them to have relationships with, or what you want to expose them to, and the decisions that, I don't say training them, but teaching them to make decisions on their own too. And it goes to them too, and they'll learn to be intentional.
Well, I think you can think of it like this. Pregnancy, you said it at the very beginning of this podcast. You said pregnancy is creating a baby, but it's also creating a mother. And it's also creating a partner who is another parent, so father or another mother. But when you are creating this baby, this is a practice run for you to actually start to do all of these things with intention. Because if you think about it, when you're just talking about all of these choices that you're making for your baby, pregnancy, preconception is a blip on the radar. You have the next 18 years of being an intentional parent, right? Where the way you behave is an example to the child. The way you eat is an example to the child. What you feed your baby is an example for the rest of their life. Like these little details, and I know that can sound overwhelming. I think it won't be if it's part of your lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. Because you're not just being intentional for your child and your family, you're being intentional for yourself. And that brings strength and empowerment to you as well. It brings health to you. I think back a lot of times when I think about intentionality is I think back to a story, not a story, but like historically to what I heard once. It's on the Weston A. Price Foundation. We'll link it here. But the idea of intentionally spacing children even because of the mother's health. So you've been through this whole process and you take it full circle to I think I'm ready to have another child again. Well, I'm just going to read a little bit of an excerpt here, but Weston A. Price discovered that many tribes practice the spacing of children in order to allow the mother to recover her nutrient stores to ensure that subsequent children would be as healthy as the first, and same with the mother. They did this by a system of multiple wives, or in the case of monogamous cultures, they had practiced deliberate abstinence. And this is just in itself being super intentional with what the choices that are being made.
So the concept is like you have a baby. That baby is utilizing your energy, life forces to be created from you. So when that baby comes out, you could be a little bit depleted. Mm-hmm. If another baby comes soon after, I guess they're saying there was a 3-year spacing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in less than 3 years, then the idea is the next baby is not going to have that same nutrient level coming from the mother to grow. So they're pulling from less, right? So they have less than the baby.
And the mother has less,
and the mother has less.
Yeah, and so then if you deplete yourself, yes, you're also depleting the child potentially, but you won't be your best, most wise, empowered, intentional self in subsequent pregnancies or subsequent like motherhood. It might take longer for you to recover that back. Make it more challenging for you too.
That makes so much sense. So at the beginning, we called ourselves seed sowers, both avid gardeners, and it just brings to mind the garden again, right? So you can plant seeds in a garden the first year with this really beautiful fresh soil, and it's this amazing garden. Next year, you plant seeds in the same place, and it's still pretty good. 5 years down the road, though, you start to notice that the garden just is not thriving. There seems to be a problem. What the heck is the problem? Well, the soil's depleted, right? We didn't provide it with nourishment and nutrients or a break and build it back up again so that it could be as good as it was on that first year, right? Same as what they're saying here with a pregnant woman.
It's like regenerative farming, And that's just another intentional thing that you can consider throughout like, making this full circle from preconception, having baby, considering another.
So when we talked about it at the beginning, we were talking about creating these baby step whys, baby step goals. And so, the first baby step goal is preconception. Second baby step goal, healthy pregnancy. Next baby step goal, healthy labor birth. Next baby step goal, healthy first year.
And postpartum for your mother.
And postpartum for the mother. You can really dial that in and like create some amazing nourishing milk and have good energy to be with your baby. There's so much you can do there. And then
next baby step for some mothers or parents may be
getting your body back.
Yeah, getting your body back and then building that up. And then the next baby step, considering another pregnancy.
Preconception again.
Yep. It's a circle. Actually, it's a circle, part of the circle of life.
It's funny that you mentioned earlier the trimesters, and this is again another set of 3.
3 years. Yeah. Yeah. The tribes, I don't think I read this in here, but the tribes, B alluded to it. They would space out pregnancies by at least 3 years.
Yeah.
Anything else was technically seen as shameful because it wasn't the best thing for the mother or the best thing for the child.
Baby. Yeah.
Yeah, that 3-year mark again.
I love it. I love it. So anything else we want to add about intentional motherhood?
I think that we've touched on it throughout this entire episode, but it boils down to empowering yourself with the knowledge to tie it back to your why.
Yes.
And to make the decisions that are right for you, that are right for your family, not that's right for your mother or your sister or your friends. It's different for everyone, and it's okay, whatever that decision is for yourself, regardless of what your choice is.
So we're going to have an episode coming up here soon, which is empowered decision making. So, we're going to take this concept about being intentional to a whole nother level with empowered decisions or informed decisions, and just kind of really get into the what and why of that for you.
Yep, absolutely. And you can find, so B and I will obviously be back every week or every couple of weeks for the podcast, but you can find both of us. We'll link our respective websites in the show notes, and then we will always provide all the resources that we mention in the podcast in the show notes as well. We thank you for joining us in our introductory episode, and if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, reach out to us.
Love to hear from you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.